The Valkyrie had conquered worlds for 3,000 years. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems. Their ships were beautiful things, made of living crystal that sang as they moved through space. Their weapons could crack planets. Their armies had never known defeat. They believed themselves to be the greatest species in the galaxy. They believed all other life existed, only to serve them or die. When they reached the edge of Galactic Union space, they did what they always did. They sent a message to the Union Council. The message was simple. Surrender everything. Give us your worlds. Give us your resources. Give us your people as slaves. Do this, or we will take it all anyway and kill everyone who resists. The Galactic Union was not built for war. It was a peaceful group of 32 species who had come together to share knowledge and trade. They had scientists who could bend light. They had poets who wrote songs that made entire planets weep with joy. They had diplomats who could solve any argument with words. What they did not have were soldiers. The Scythian were small creatures with soft blue skin and large eyes. They had never hurt another living thing in their entire history. The Morwani were giants made of living water who believed violence was a sickness of the mind. The Kelthari were bird-like beings who fainted at the sight of blood. None of them knew how to fight. None of them wanted to learn. When the Valkyrie message arrived, the Union Council met in emergency session. The great chamber on Station Harmony was filled with frightened delegates. They spoke in whispers. Some of them were already crying. Ambassador Talviri of the Scythian stood at the center of the chamber. Her blue skin had turned pale gray with fear. Her frills lay flat against her neck. She had been a diplomat for 40 years. She had solved 100 conflicts with patience and kindness. But she had no answer for this. "They will kill us all," said the Morwani delegate, his watery form trembling. "We cannot fight them. We do not know how. Perhaps we can negotiate," suggested the Kelthari ambassador. "Perhaps we can offer them something they want." "They want everything," Talviri said quietly. "They want us to kneel. They want us to die. There is nothing to negotiate." The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of extinction pressed down on them all. Then a voice came from the back of the room. "There is another option." Everyone turned to look. The speaker was a Drithani, a tall, insect-like being with compound eyes that saw everything. His name was Councillor Vex, and he was the oldest member of the Union. 5 years ago, Vex said slowly, "We accepted a new species into the Union. We did not want to. Many of us voted against it. We were afraid of them. We are still afraid of them." Talviri felt her stomachs clench. She knew who Vex was talking about. "The humans?" she whispered. "Yes, the humans." Vex moved forward, his legs clicking on the floor. "They come from a world called Earth. It is a death world, a place of poison and fire and endless violence. Everything on their planet tries to kill everything else. And somehow, they survived. Somehow, they became the deadliest thing on their world. They are dangerous," the Morwani delegate said. "They smile and show their teeth like predators. They sweat poison through their skin. They touch each other constantly as if checking for wounds." "They are wrong." "Yes," Vex agreed. "They are all of those things. They are also the only species in this union that knows how to kill." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded that Vex be removed. Others begged him to explain. Talviri raised her hands for silence. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. "I am suggesting," Vex said, "that we invoke the Mutual Defense Clause. We ask the humans to fight for us. We ask them to do what we cannot do. We ask them to save us." "And what will that cost us?" Talviri asked. "What happens when we invite monsters to defend us from monsters?" Vex was quiet for a moment. His compound eyes reflected the frightened faces of 100 delegates. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I know what happens if we do not. The Valkyrie will burn our worlds. They will enslave our children. They will erase our cultures from history. At least with the humans, we have a chance." Talviri closed her eyes. She thought of her home world. She thought of the gardens where she had grown up. She thought of her daughter, only 10 years old, who still believed the universe was a kind place. She made her decision. 2 days later, she stood in a small meeting room on the human station called Armstrong. The room was too warm. The air smelled strange. Everything felt heavy because humans came from a planet with stronger gravity than most. Across the table sat a human woman. Her name was Commander Ilara Vance. She had gray hair cut short and eyes the color of storm clouds. Her face was covered in small scars. When she smiled, Talviri could see her teeth, and it took all her courage not to run. "Ambassador," Vance said. Her voice was calm and low. "Your message said this was urgent." Talviri forced herself to speak. "The Velkori Dominion has threatened to destroy us. We have no army. We have no weapons. We have no hope." She paused. "We are asking for your help." Vance was silent for a moment. Then she leaned back in her chair and smiled again. This time, the smile reached her eyes. "We thought you would never ask." Talviri felt a chill run through her body. She had just invited death itself to save her people. She hoped she had not made a terrible mistake. The Velkori Armada gathered at the Helix Corridor. 642 warships. Each one was a masterpiece of crystal and light. Each one carried enough weapons to burn a continent. The fleet stretched across space like a field of deadly flowers. Fleet Commander Crix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Song. His crystalline body hummed with confidence. His species had conquered worlds without number. These soft creatures of the Union would fall like all the others. His sensors showed a small force approaching. 47 ships. Human ships. Crix made a sound that passed for laughter among his people. 47 against 600. The humans were either brave or stupid. Probably both. "They send insects to fight gods," Crix said to his officers. "We will crush them in moments." Far away, on the observation station Witness, Ambassador Talviri watched the two fleets on her display screen. Her hands were shaking. She had brought the humans into this war. Now she would watch them die. The human ships looked ugly compared to the Velkori crystals. They were gray and angular, covered in strange bumps and angles. They moved in no formation that Talviri could recognize. "They are so few," whispered her aide. "They cannot win." Talviri said nothing. She just watched. The Velkori fleet moved forward in perfect lines. Their crystal ships sang battle hymns that echoed across all frequencies. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. The human ships did nothing. They just drifted in space. Engines cold, systems dark. Then the screaming started. Throughout the Velkori fleet, ships began to shake. The crystal hulls vibrated with a sound that no one had made. Velkori crew members grabbed their heads as pain tore through their bodies. Their crystalline forms cracked and shattered from the inside. The humans had seeded the corridor with thousands of tiny machines. Each machine sent out a sound wave. The sound was designed specifically to break crystal. It found the exact frequency that made Velkori bodies come apart. 47 Velkori ships cracked open before anyone understood what was happening. Fleet Commander Crix screamed orders. His fleet broke formation, trying to escape the invisible attack. But they were moving into a trap. The human ships came alive. They emerged from behind asteroids, from inside dust clouds, from underneath disabled Velkori carriers. They had been hiding everywhere, waiting like predators in tall grass. They did not fight the way Crix expected. There were no elegant exchanges of fire, no formal challenges, no honor. The humans attacked from behind. They hit wounded ships first. They targeted engines and life support, leaving crews to die slowly in the dark. They fired weapons that did not kill cleanly. Crix watched in horror as a human torpedo struck one of his carriers. The weapon did not explode. Instead, it melted. Liquid fire spread across the crystal hull, eating through it like acid. The carrier burned from the outside in, and Crix could hear the crew screaming on the open channels. "What kind of weapon is that?" his first officer gasped. "They call it thermite," the computer replied. "A chemical reaction that produces extreme heat. It cannot be stopped once started." Another ship went dark as human vessels surrounded it. Instead of destroying it, they attached themselves to its hull. Small pods opened, and human soldiers poured out in sealed armor. They went inside the Velkori ship. Crix did not understand at first. Why would anyone enter an enemy vessel during battle? It was madness. It was suicide. Then the reports came in. The human soldiers were moving through the ship in small groups. They carried weapons that fired metal at high speeds. They carried blades. They carried fire. The Velkori crew tried to fight back. They were larger than humans. They were stronger. But they had never fought anything at close range. They had never had an enemy within arm's reach. The humans had. The humans moved like water. They used every shadow. They attacked from every angle. When a Valkyrie soldier struck one of them, the human would fall, and then get back up. They took wounds that should have killed them and kept fighting. They did not stop. Crix watched the life signs on his display. One by one, his crew members went dark. They are animals. His first officer whispered. They fight like animals. No, Crix said quietly. Animals fight to survive. These creatures fight because they enjoy it. The battle lasted 9 hours. When it ended, 400 Valkyrie ships were destroyed or captured. The rest fled in chaos. Their crystal song turned to screams of terror. The human fleet lost 11 ships. On the observation station, Talviri stood frozen. Her display showed the aftermath. Burning wreckage. Drifting bodies. The remains of an armada that had thought itself invincible. She had wanted the humans to save her people. She had prayed for a miracle. Now she watched human soldiers drag Valkyrie officers from their command chairs. She watched them execute prisoners with small handheld weapons. She watched them collect trophies from the dead. Her aide was crying. "What have we done?" he whispered. "What have we invited into our home?" Talviri could not answer. She had asked Death to fight for her, and Death had answered. Now she understood that some prayers should never be made. Across the void, on the bridge of her command ship, Commander Vance reviewed the battle data. Her face showed no emotion. This was not victory to her. This was just the beginning. "Send a message to Union Command," she told her officers. "Tell them the corridor is secure. Tell them the Valkyrie now understand what they are facing." She paused, looking out at the burning remains of the enemy fleet. "And tell them this is how humans wage war. If they want our help, they need to accept what comes with it." The message was sent. The Union received it in silence, and the galaxy learned to fear the children of Earth. The Valkyrie Dominion did not understand what was happening to them. For 3,000 years, they had been the hunters. They had swept across the stars like a storm, crushing all resistance beneath their crystal feet. Species that fought them died. Species that surrendered became slaves. There was no third option. Now there was something new. Something terrible. The humans did not fight like any enemy the Valkyrie had faced before. They did not meet the Dominion in open battle. They did not defend territory. They did not follow any rules that the Valkyrie understood. They simply appeared from nowhere, killed everything they could reach, and vanished into the dark. Commander Vance called it psychological attrition. Her officers called it the hunting strategy. The Valkyrie called it the nightmare. It started small. A supply convoy would be traveling through safe space, far from any battle lines. Guards would be relaxed. Crews would be resting. Then human ships would drop out of faster-than-light travel directly on top of them. The attacks were always fast. The humans would destroy half the convoy in the first 30 seconds. Then they would leave. They would not finish the job. They would not take prisoners. They would simply disappear, leaving burning ships and terrified survivors behind. The survivors were important. Vance always made sure there were survivors. Those survivors would return to Dominion space with stories. Stories of human ships that moved like ghosts. Stories of weapons that burned through crystal like it was paper. Stories of soldiers who could not be killed. The stories spread through the Valkyrie military like a disease. Soldiers began to see human ships in every shadow. Officers refused to sleep because they dreamed of human faces. Entire crews went mad from the fear, screaming that the humans were already inside their walls, waiting. Some of the stories were true. Some of them were not. It did not matter. Fear does not need truth to grow. The humans made sure to feed that fear. On one occasion, a Valkyrie listening station picked up a strange transmission. It was music, human music. The sound was harsh and violent, full of screaming voices and crashing instruments. The Valkyrie translators called it heavy metal. The music played for 3 hours. Then the station exploded. No one ever found out how the humans had gotten close enough to destroy it. No one ever found the human ships on any sensor. The music was the only warning. After that, Valkyrie crews would panic whenever they heard any unusual sound on their communication systems. Some ships fired on each other because they thought they heard human music. Others abandoned their posts and fled into empty space. The humans noticed. They began playing the music more often. On another occasion, A Valkyrie colony world received a gift. A single escape pod drifted down from orbit and landed in the capital city. Inside were 10 Valkyrie soldiers who had been captured in battle. They were alive. They were unharmed. They had been released, but something was wrong with them. They would not speak. They would not eat. They would not look at anyone. They just sat in silence, staring at nothing. Shaking, the Dominion doctors examined them. Their bodies were fine. Their minds were broken. No one ever found out what the humans had done to them. The soldiers never said. They never said anything again. The message was clear. Death was not the worst thing the humans could do. Fleet Commander Crix gathered the remains of his forces and tried to plan a counterattack. But his officers argued with each other. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to flee. A few suggested surrender. Crix executed the ones who mentioned surrender. But he knew they were right to be afraid. The humans were not trying to destroy the Valkyrie fleet. They were trying to break its spirit. And it was working. Reports came in from across the Dominion. The outer colonies were in revolt. Species that had been enslaved for centuries now saw weakness in their masters. They rose up by the millions. And the Dominion did not have enough soldiers to stop them. The humans helped the revolts. They sent weapons. They sent trainers. They sent hope. Within 7 cycles, the Valkyrie had lost more territory to rebellion than to direct human attack. Their empire was collapsing from the inside, and they could not stop it. Crix stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the star map. Red lights marked human attacks. Orange lights marked rebellions. Green lights marked territory still under Dominion control. There was very little green left. How? Crix whispered. How do they do this? We have more ships. We have more soldiers. We have more resources. How are we losing? His first officer stood beside him. Her crystalline form was dull with exhaustion. She had not slept in days. They do not fight to win, she said quietly. They fight to make us lose. There is a difference. Crix did not understand. War was simple. You killed the enemy until they could not fight anymore. You destroyed their ships and burned their worlds. You won through strength. The humans did not see it that way. The humans understood that strength meant nothing if you were too afraid to use it. They understood that an army that cannot sleep, cannot think, cannot trust its own shadow, is already defeated. They understood that the worst wound is not the one that kills you. It is the one that makes you wish you were dead. Crix looked at his map. He looked at the terrified faces of his officers. He looked at the reports of rebellion, and madness, and death. And for the first time in his long life, Fleet Commander Crix of the Valkyrie Dominion considered something he had never considered before. He considered asking for peace. The humans had not broken his fleet. They had broken his will. And he knew that was exactly what they had intended. The war was almost over. Everyone knew it. The Valkyrie had sent messages asking for negotiations. Their great armada was scattered. Their empire was burning. The masters of 100 worlds had been brought to their knees in less than 18 cycles. The Union should have been celebrating. They were not. Ambassador Talviri walked through the corridors of Station Harmony and saw fear on every face she passed. The Morwani delegates moved away from her. The Kelthari would not meet her eyes. Even her own Scythian colleagues treated her like a stranger. She understood why. She had brought the humans into this war. She had unleashed something that could not be put back in its cage. The recordings had spread through the Union like poison. Every delegate had seen them. Human soldiers burning through crystal hulls. Human weapons turning living beings into ash. Human voices laughing as they killed. The Union had been saved. But no one felt safe. Talviri requested a private meeting with Commander Vance. She needed to understand. She needed to know how a species could carry such violence inside them and still function. Still think. Still feel. Vance agreed to meet her on the human ship Perseverance. The name seemed wrong to Talviri. Perseverance was a gentle word. This ship was not gentle. The commander's quarters were small and plain. There were no decorations, no comforts, just a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. Vance was sitting at her desk when Talviri entered. The human woman looked tired. There were new lines on her face, new gray in her hair. War had cost her something, even if she had won. "Ambassador," Vance said. "Please sit." Talviri took a seat across from her. For a long moment, Neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy with things that needed to be said. I watched the recordings, Talveri finally said. All of them. Vance nodded. I assumed you would. Your soldiers burned ships full of living beings. They executed prisoners. They tortured captives until their minds broke. Talveri's voice was shaking. How do you do these things? How do you live with yourselves afterward? Vance was quiet for a moment. Her storm-gray eyes looked out at the stars. Do you know what Earth is like? She asked. A death world, Talveri said. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperatures. Everything there tries to kill everything else. That is what the science reports say. But they do not tell the whole story. Vance turned to face her. On Earth, there is no peace. There has never been peace. Every creature that survives there does so by killing other creatures. The plants kill. The insects kill. The water itself can kill you if you are not careful. She leaned forward. Humans did not become what we are by being kind. We became what we are by being the most dangerous thing on a planet full of dangerous things. We learned to kill before we learned to speak. We learned to fear before we learned to love. Talveri felt cold. But you have cities, art, music, culture. How can such violence exist alongside such beauty? Because violence is part of our beauty, Vance said. Our greatest art comes from our greatest pain. Our deepest love grows from our deepest fear. We are not creatures of peace who sometimes fight. We are creatures of war who sometimes find peace. She stood and walked to the window. The stars reflected in her eyes. Every tactic we used against the Velkhori, we invented to kill other humans first. The ambushes, the psychological warfare, the torture, the fire. Her voice was very quiet. For thousands of years, we did these things to each other. We burned our own cities. We enslaved our own people. We invented 100 ways to cause suffering because we wanted to win. Talveri felt sick. Why? Why would you do such things to your own kind? Vance turned to look at her. Because on Earth, your own kind is also your greatest threat. There is no outside enemy to unite us. There is only us. And we learned that the best way to survive is to make sure everyone else is too afraid to attack you. That is monstrous. Yes, it is. Vance did not argue. We know what we are. We have always known. That knowledge is the heaviest thing we carry. Talveri was silent for a long time. She thought about her own people. The Scythene had never known war. They had evolved on a gentle world where food was plentiful and predators were rare. They had never needed to fight. They had never learned to hate. She had always believed that made them better, more evolved, more civilized. Now she wondered if it just made them weak. Do you regret it? She asked. Any of it? Vance considered the question. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the universe is the kind of place where species like the Velkhori can exist. I regret that someone had to stop them, and that someone had to be us. She met Talveri's eyes. But I do not regret saving your people. I do not regret protecting the innocent. Sometimes the only way to stop evil is to be willing to do terrible things. That is the burden Earth gave us. We carry it so others do not have to. Talveri stood up. Her legs felt unsteady. Her worldview had been shattered, and she did not know how to put it back together. Thank you, she said quietly, for your honesty, and for saving us, even if the cost was higher than we understood. Vance nodded. That is what allies do. Talveri walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. Will you ever find peace? She asked. Your species. Will you ever escape what Earth made you? Vance smiled. It was a sad smile, full of old pain and older hope. We are trying, she said. Every day we are trying. Talveri left the ship. She did not look back. She had wanted to understand the humans. Now she did, and she would never feel safe again. The final assembly was held on Concordance Prime, the largest neutral station in known space. Its great chamber could hold 10,000 beings. Today, it held the fate of civilizations. 32 Union species filled the upper galleries. Their delegates sat in careful rows, watching everything with frightened eyes. They had won the war. They did not feel like winners. The Velkhori delegation sat at the lowest level, where criminals and defeated enemies traditionally belonged. There were only 20 of them left, 20 survivors of a species that had once ruled an empire. Their crystal bodies were dull and cracked. Their harmonic voices were silent. And in the center of the chamber, where all eyes would focus, sat the human delegation. There were only 7 humans. Commander Vance sat in the middle, her uniform clean but plain. She wore no medals. She carried no weapons. She did not need them. Everyone in the chamber knew what she was. The High Resonant of the Valkyrie rose to speak. His name was Crystalline Prime Vorax, and he had ruled the Dominion for 2 centuries. He had ordered the deaths of billions. He had watched worlds burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. Now he stood broken before his enemies. His crystalline form showed 3 deep cracks where human weapons had struck his flagship. He would carry those scars forever. "We came to this region believing ourselves supreme," Vorax said. His voice was barely a whisper. The translators had to amplify it so everyone could hear. "We believed the species of the Union were prey. We believed we would crush them as we had crushed all others." He paused. His cracked form trembled. "We were wrong." A murmur ran through the chamber. No one had ever heard a Valkyrie admit defeat. Their pride was legendary. Their arrogance was absolute. War had broken both. "We did not understand what we faced," Vorax continued. "We did not understand what a death world creates. We did not understand that survival itself can be a weapon." He turned toward the human delegation. "We understand now." Commander Vance watched him without expression. Her storm-gray eyes gave nothing away. "We have seen things that cannot be unseen," Vorax said. "Ships that appear from nothing. Weapons that burn without end. Soldiers that cannot be killed by any means we possess." His voice cracked like his body. "Music that haunts our dreams." Several Valkyrie behind him shuddered at the mention of music. Some covered their ears, even though no sound was playing. "Our empire is gone. Our colonies have fallen. Our people are scattered across the stars, hiding from the nightmare we awakened." Vorax lowered his head. It was a gesture of complete submission. No Valkyrie had ever performed it in recorded history. "We beg the Assembly for terms. We beg the humans for mercy." His voice broke completely. "We will withdraw from all territory we have taken. We will pay whatever reparations you demand. We will do whatever is required. Just please let this end." The chamber was absolutely silent. 10,000 beings held their breath. Ambassador Talviri looked down at the broken High Resonant. She remembered the terror she had felt when the Valkyrie first threatened her people. She remembered the recordings of their previous conquests, the slavery, the genocide, the complete lack of mercy for any species they considered inferior. Part of her wanted to see them suffer. Part of her thought they deserved everything the humans had done to them. But another part of her remembered Vance's words. Sometimes the only way to stop evil is to be willing to do terrible things. The humans had done those things. They had carried that burden. What would the Union do now? Commander Vance rose from her seat. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. Some delegates looked away quickly, afraid to meet her gaze. She walked slowly down to where Vorax stood trembling. Her boots echoed on the stone floor. Each step sounded like thunder in the silence. She stopped in front of the High Resonant. He towered over her. His crystalline body was 3 times her size, but he was the one who flinched. "You believed you were predators," Vance said quietly. Her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "You believed the universe belonged to the strong. You believed mercy was weakness." Vorax said nothing. He could not argue. "Earth taught my species many things," Vance continued. "It taught us to fight. It taught us to kill. It taught us to survive at any cost." She paused. "But it also taught us something else." She extended her hand. Vorax stared at it. That small, 5-fingered thing that had commanded so much destruction. That hand had signed orders that burned his fleet. That hand had pointed at maps and said, "Take no prisoners." Now that hand was open, waiting. "Earth taught us mercy," Vance said. "Eventually, after we had hurt each other enough, after we had burned enough cities and buried enough children, we learned that strength without compassion is just cruelty. And we learned that the truly strong are those who can choose not to destroy." She met Vorax's eyes. "Your empire is finished. Your armies are broken. Your pride is ash." Her voice was firm but not cruel. "But your people can still live. Your culture can still continue. You can still choose to be something better than what you were." She kept her hand extended. "That is the mercy Earth taught us. Take it or leave it. The choice is yours." The chamber was silent. 10,000 beings watched as the ruler of a fallen empire stared at a human hand. Slowly, trembling, Forax reached out. His crystalline fingers touched Vance's palm. They were cold. Hers were warm. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." The chamber erupted in sound. Some species cheered. Others wept. Many simply stared in disbelief. Talviri watched from her seat. Tears ran down her blue face. She did not wipe them away. The humans had shown the galaxy what Deathworlds created. Violence. Fear. The ability to break any enemy. But they had also shown something else. Something that mattered more. The ability to heal. The ability to forgive. The ability to extend a hand to a fallen enemy and help them stand. The war was over. The healing would take centuries, but it had begun with a single human hand, offered in mercy to a species that deserved none. That was humanity. That was Earth. Terror and compassion, destruction and hope, all wrapped together in one impossible species. The galaxy would remember this day forever. Not just because of the war, but because of how it ended. With pleas for mercy echoed through the assembly. And with mercy given,